Welcome to Easy Style with Sammy. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each episode, I invite a friend, family member, colleague, or just someone I've met on this journey called life to come and share their personal style and approach to business, parenting, life, and everything in between. You'll hear motivational and inspirational stories that will help you refine and build your own personal style. Remember, style is easy when it comes from within. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Easy Style with Sammy. My guest today is Lori Eich. Lori, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I feel so honored.
Well, we have known each other, I think, since birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And been around each other our entire lives, off and on. And I have always seen you as somebody who has always just carved their own path, had their own kind of energy and style and approach, and you just kind of done stuff. And I've always been impressed with kind of your confidence and just ability to try new things and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, that sums up kind of how I've approached my life so far, I think.
Seems to be working out okay.
Yeah, I've never really been the same as everyone else. And as much as I want to fit in and I want to be a normal person, I'm just not. And so I just, and that part of becoming an adult is sort of embracing that and owning it. And then just like showing up as your true authentic self. That's kind of how I've carved out my path.
I love that. Well, why don't you maybe just share a brief, and I know we're going to talk a lot about kind of your work history, your path, kind of like how you've evolved and changed and gone through all these different stages of your career and activities, which we'll touch on. But why don't you just share a little bit about who you are?
Great. So yeah, I'm Lori. I grew up as a nerd, a nerd and an athlete, kind of together. And so, embracing those two sides of my self, I kind of carved my way through life here. I went to school and elementary and junior high and high school with Sammy, and eventually went off to boarding school because they offered me.
That's what you do in the Midwest.
Right.
The Midwest has a strong boarding school culture.
I ran out of math classes at school, and they were going to be able to offer me some more math classes, and then they gave me a scholarship, and I was like, okay, sounds good. So it was just say yes. And, went to MIT for college and for grad school as well. I studied geology and I got my master's in geophysics, was able to be a geologist for a couple of years after that, which was fun. When I was a geologist, it was really fun. When I was a geologist in California, it was super fun because like rocks are really fun in California. But when I moved to Chicago, the rocks are way less fun here, and being outside in the winter is way less fun here. For many reasons, the job was not what I needed it to be. So I found an opportunity with a trading firm. Chicago does have a large financial industry, and I was like, if I'm not going to do geology, what else can I do? I was like, well, I'm good at math. All right, let's try this. So I spent a little bit of time as a Eurodollar futures trader. That company did not survive. So that was an interesting pivot point in my career where I was like, well, what do I do next? My resume is short and I'm not sure what I can do. But I'm like, I'm really good at learning and I'm a nerd. And so, and I was also playing ultimate frisbee at the time. My frisbee coach was the leader of a software engineering team. And he was like, you know what? He's like, I can teach anyone how to write code. I can't teach you how to think. So he hired me because he knew I was coachable and he knew I'd be able to learn. So he basically hired me as an apprentice, more or less. It was an apprenticeship program. It's not what we called it. He kind of made this up, but he hired me at essentially like intern rates. As long as over the course of the first year, I got a quarterly review. And it's like, if you're progressing well, we'll give you a little bit of pay raise and like learn how to be a software engineer. So I spent basically a year in a software engineering apprenticeship program. And by the end, I was getting paid like an entry level person coming out of college. So that was nice, that was a really great opportunity. And I feel really lucky that he took a chance on me. So yeah, I was a software engineer for a while. That company got bought. I decided I didn't want to write code anymore, but I really like product. I really liked product management, and I really kind of liked the idea of connecting the software that's being built to the people who are using it, and making sure that you're building the right thing that fits the business model. And so, with the company that bought us had a really, really, really robust and solid product management program. So I was able to, within the acquisition, step over into the product management team, and learn from them. And that was really beneficial for me. So, and that kind of started my whole career as a product management leader. And so, and from there, it's basically just been product management across a bunch of startups in Chicago, mostly in the AI space. And I really like understanding how to build software and technology for data scientists, used by data scientists, that has AI in it. And now I'm pivoting once again. And I basically started listening to a lot of podcasts about climate change, watched some David Attenborough movies, and their documentaries. And now I'm terrified about what's happening to the planet, and I want to go and use my powers for good. So I'm now pivoting again and looking to do something in the climate space.
What I love about this trajectory is that, like, you as a college student at MIT studying geology probably could have never pictured you now in the path that you're about to go down. Like, I just love that you kind of have trusted the process, and that, like, I'm going to make the next best step for me right now, as opposed to it always having to be this like grandiose, like, and maybe you were having those conversations in your head and with your husband and whatnot, but like, it seems like you were making the right decision for what you needed right now, trusting that it was going to take you where it needed to go.
Yeah. Every move I've made and every decision I've made has really been for like thinking about like, what's going to make me happy right now. And, how can I help? When I'm looking at a new company and looking for a new opportunity, I'm just like, does my skill set fit in here? Does my skill set solve a problem for them? And can I actually get in and hit the ground running and help? Can I help them solve the problem they're out to solve? Is it a problem I want to solve? Like, that's also a thing. That's becoming more and more important for me, is making sure I'm solving problems that matter to me.
Well, and you and JJ both went from like more corporate jobs to kind of the more startup space. So like, what was that like for both of you to be working for smaller companies and startups? Like, was that nerve-wracking? Is it exciting? Like, do you two have just similar work styles and that entrepreneurial spirit where like that's what just lights you up and excites you? Because for most couples, to have two people in the tech startup space could be terrifying.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I realized that throughout my career, I've just worked for smaller and smaller and smaller companies.
Regressed.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm like, oh, actually, I just want to start my own thing now. Yeah. I don't really ever see startups. I've never really seen startups as a risk. And honestly, once you're in once like startup is bigger than like 50 or so people, if they're hiring at all, it's because they're growing, and it's because they have a need that they aren't currently filling. And that is a strategic move. They're going to have a lot of people who care about money paying attention to that. And so like getting hired by a startup is actually like, if they're super tiny, it's a risk. I mean, it's a risk that it won't survive. But honestly, the only I worked for all these startups, right? And the only one that didn't survive was the trading firm. As an early career person, that was really hard for me. When your resume isn't very long, the risk is real. Yeah. It's just harder to carve out. It's harder to find something else in your space. When you've got a few things under your belt, and you've kind of been around the block a little bit, like the startup itself isn't the risk. There's probably something else out there that you can do. You've got enough skills built up, and you've got enough connections that, if you need to go find your next thing, it'll be there. But like, and that's where I'm thinking, like, starting with these bigger companies and then going smaller and smaller. That's kind of like that seems safe to me. And with JJ, with my partner JJ, Google's not really a startup anymore.
Well, no.
But he did have some time there. And what was great about that is that, people who have worked at Google often go and do something else. And so the connections and the friends he made there, have really helped the rest of his career as well. He's been able to stay in contact with them and continue to work with them in other places.
I love that. Well, and I think too, it just is increasing your ability, like, because I've done the same thing, like gone to lesser smaller teams or smaller companies, but it allows you to increase your impact, which is what I have always loved. And I think the other thing that cracks me up is I have often had people say to me, well, your title now is less, or like your title is more, like, are you like, and to me, like the title doesn't matter. Cause I'm like you, like, what am I doing? Who am I supporting? And how am I showing up in the world? I think is more critical. And I think you do the same thing. And I love that. I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning, which was that you are a nerd and an athlete. And so I know that for you, like the two things are not, like you are not more entrepreneurial or more athletic. Like I feel like you always have those two things running in tandem all the time. Like, so do you feel the need, like if you didn't have an athletic release all the time, like then you just wouldn't be Lori?
Yeah, I am my most human and my most normal self when I've gone to the gym in the morning. I noticed this back when I was going to the office a couple jobs ago. Is like I showed up one day and I was like, God, I'm just addicted. I'm sorry, can I say
it's okay.
I was like, man, I'm such a jerk. And then I was like, I didn't go to the gym this morning. And then once I got that, like once I checked myself on that, I was like, oh, like reset your brain, Lori. You just didn't work out today.
Yeah.
And that's like recognizing that about myself is like I have to work out or I'm gonna go crazy. I can't sleep if I don't go to the gym. Like it's I have energy to spend.
It must be spent. Well, and you started ultimate frisbee in college, or did you start that in high school?
That was in college. I wanted to play in high school, but I was too awkward to even go approach the people who were throwing frisbees on the lawn. Like, I was like, I'm not cool enough to make friends with the people throwing frisbees.
Oh, that's how we all feel that.
Yeah.
But ultimate frisbee has taken you all over the world.
Yeah, it sure has. It's been fun. And that was just one where I was like, I didn't realize when I started playing in college that I was going to get to keep playing after college. I didn't know there was this whole like club scene as an adult. And so I during grad school, I think I started playing with a team in Boston, a co-ed team in Boston. And then we qualified for nationals and we're like, oh, this is fun. And I had a lot of fun there and I had a lot of fun with that team. And then when I moved to the Bay, I just tried out for another team and then like, oh, we qualified for nationals and then we won. It was like, oh, fun. Like, I was like, oh, this is great. I like this sport. We win things. But it was more that I really liked the people that I found with the sport. And I've had some great opportunities. I just feel really lucky. I've been in the right place at the right time and, been able to like play with Team USA and play with, just be able to play all around the world. And I've made some of the greatest friends I could ever make with this sport, because these are all people who chose a weird sport. And, and so, but they're like, athletes, but they're kind of nerdy too. And I find a lot of like-minded people there.
Well, and I think it's a good testament too to like, we all make excuses like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that because I don't have enough time or my job is too demanding. And you have always found a way, I'm sure it wasn't always easy, but a way to balance like, well, no, my job is a non-negotiable because I love what I'm doing, but frisbee is a non-negotiable because I love that. It's like you figure out a way to make it work if it's something that matters to you. We all have the same amount of time in a day. Yeah,
exactly. No, that's exactly it. Like time is the risk at any given moment. The risk is not like job stability. The risk is not, it's just time. And where you're going to put your time matters and who you're going to spend it with matters.
So speaking of taking a risk and doing something different, I should have checked on this, but you have some crazy thing happening in Brazil.
Yeah. So I'm old now and Ultimate Frisbee is really, really hard when you're not like 25 anymore. So I'm playing less Frisbee. If you ask JJ, my husband, he will say I'm not playing less Frisbee, but I am. Where I'm playing less Frisbee and I am I'm just doing other things. And so I found this sport called adventure racing. What happened was during the pandemic, I binge watched some shows. One of them was World's Toughest Race with Bear Grylls. And I was like, this is cool. So they're in Fiji, they're doing the eco challenge, and it's like they're just out in the woods. They just have their backpack on their back, and they have to go and like catamaran across the bay. They got to go hike up this mountain. They got to like ride a donkey. I don't know. There's all this stuff. And I was like, this looks so fun. How do I do this? And so I started looking into adventure racing. I signed up for a 4-hour race in Indiana. This is where, you just show up. They hand you a map. And they say, okay, this part's on foot, this part's on mountain bike. You'll have canoes over here. Have at it. Get back in 4 hours or you lose points. And so you're going and you're trying to hit all these checkpoints. So this has now grown and grown and grown in my brain where I got a phone call. I got a phone call about a year ago from a friend. He was like, hey, there's this race in Brazil next year. It's 500 kilometer, 5-day race. Are you in? I was like, yeah. It was like, that sounds good. Actually, I didn't say yes right away. I thought about it for about 30 seconds. and then I asked him, are you sure I can do this?
Yeah.
He's like, I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't think you could do this. I was like, all right, if you think I can do this, I think I could probably do this.
But what gives you the confidence to like you just jump into things like wholeheartedly? It's just like, you know what? Yeah, this sounds great. I'm going to do it. Like, are there ever things like this or like opportunities that come your way that you're like, no, like most people are scared to do new things. Like, what do you think it is about your thought process and how you approach things that just allows you to jump in? Because that's like the Amazing Race on steroids.
Yeah.
Is what that is.
Something about me that I've realized is that I assume I can do something up until the moment that it's very clear that I can't. I always just go into something being like, this will probably work out. And a lot of it is just like, it's taking the skills that I have and applying them to something new. And one of the skills I do have is, pattern recognition and like seeing something over here and finding an analog over here. So, if I'm like, I don't know, I feel like it works physically as well as mentally.
Mm-hmm.
That's with a lot of the pivots I've made across my career, it's still all the same. Like I've worked for a bunch of different types of product companies, but it's product management is the same everywhere. And when I'm thinking about, building my own company now, I'm like, it's just a big product. It's the same thing. You still do the same like market discovery, customer discovery. You do all of that. It's the same thing you would have done in a small product within a company. Now it's just the whole company. I don't know. So, but it's funny, like, I think that confidence itself, like all of my confidence, I'm like oozing with confidence, right? It's to a fault. But I think it really stems from success. And the thing with me is that I'm ridiculously optimistic. And I find small successes in everything I do. And so things that other people might perceive as a loss, I'm still going to see it as a win somehow. And that's really where, like, if I didn't learn from something, that's the real loss. But as long as whatever I did taught me something about myself, taught me something about the world, like everybody wins overall. If you learn, you win.
I think that's huge what you're saying, because I think it's like I can't remember what her name is, but the founder of Spanx. Like she said, when she was a kid, she would go to dinner, and every day at dinner, her dad would say, "What did you fail at today?" And like really normalizing failure, just like what you're saying, like we can't think about these things as failure. But I also love that you said, I celebrate the small successes, because I think you're 100% correct that we get so in the mundane of the day to day that we don't think about the little things that we accomplished that are awesome. And if we didn't do that thing, then the big thing would never come to fruition. So like those little things make a change. So I think even if you're like, I'm not going to become a super optimistic person like Lori, start with just celebrating the small successes and see what happens.
Yeah, I had a coworker once where every day I would ask him if he won at the gym that morning, because I knew that he worked out in the morning too. Like, did you win?
You won?
Yeah. Because I was like, I don't know. I do CrossFit, so sometimes I win. Sometimes I don't. I don't win very much. But my mom's like, did you win today? And he's like, I showed up, so yes. I'm like, yes. So we get a high five every day, like, because we won by showing up.
Yeah, I think it's those little mindset tweaks that like build on top of each other and make a huge impact, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I know your whole family, and they're all pretty positive people also. So something that was probably drilled into you as a little child. Well, I love all of this. I love the opportunity to catch up with you because we don't get to talk as often as I would like. But let's wrap this up with kind of the last 5 questions that we ask everybody that's on this podcast. So where do you go for personal development or to learn and kind of do some self-growth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a nerd, right? So it used to be edX or Coursera. I would like sign up for a whole bunch of courses and then like maybe really commit to like 1 or 2 of them and dive deep. And that was like, when I switched into being a software engineer, I was like, well, I better learn some more of this. So even though I was writing in like, .NET, I went and learned Python through MIT's intro to Python class. And I like dove deep in that. And I was like, great. Now I also know Python. Fun. I don't know it anymore. But I could learn. But yeah, lately it's less that and more, especially diving into the climate space, it's podcasts now.
Yeah.
There are some really, really good podcasts out there that are exactly what I need right now. And when you're dealing with like climate change stuff, it's all like everything is sort of new tech startups. And so the My Climate Journey podcast is my favorite right now. And then, How I Built This is what I listen to for learning about, other entrepreneurs and just hearing more founder stories. And then Planet Money if I want to keep a finger on the pulse of global economics.
Love that. Yeah. We'll link those up in the show notes too if anybody else is interested in listening to any of those. That's awesome. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I consider myself an awkward extrovert. I love people and I love the energy of large events. I'm just really awkward, especially when I'm talking to more than one person. So I'm like, I need like one-on-one conversations, but like amongst a lot of people.
Got it. I love that. That's a new one. We haven't heard that one yet.
Oh,
what is one thing that's on your goal list for this year, either personal or professional?
Yeah, I think from a career standpoint, I just want to really know what my next thing is by the end of the year and really have that honed in. But like from a personal standpoint, like I'm all in the climate space now. So I'm like, how do I find a way to reduce the waste generated in the household that I live in on a day-to-day basis? So I want to bike and walk more in the summer, grow more of our own food. And I kind of want to find a way to upgrade the house to just be less reliant on natural gas for energy and cooking.
That's a great goal. What is a piece of advice you've gotten from someone that has stuck with you?
So, Sammy, this one actually came from you.
What?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I was talking about some ideas that I had for my own business. And we were talking about this. And I said something like, well, I'm not really an expert in that, so maybe I shouldn't do it. And I think you said your response was something like, you don't have to be an expert. You can still build it. You just need to find your people. And like, as I've been tinkering around with these like startup ideas, it keeps coming back to that where, as long as I surround myself with people who are all like differently T-shaped, that meaning that they're like depth of knowledge in one thing and like breadth of knowledge in a bunch of stuff. But as long as that depth of knowledge is something different for everybody, then we're all bringing something different to the table and we are covering each other's weaknesses. And I love that. That's how I'm trying to build my next team.
Well, oddly enough, I agree with that advice. That's amazing. And I think that's critical, especially when you can find people that can leave their ego at the door for the common good of what you're trying to achieve. I think that's where the magic happens.
Totally.
Yeah, that's exciting. Okay, last one. What is a non-negotiable for you in your life?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one. I was like, I don't know. Everything's pretty negotiable, but then I realized it's the lake. It's it's having that opportunity in the summer to be, back at the hometown lake and spending time where we grew up and being in and around the really beautiful natural space that was part of my childhood and that I want to be there forever.
And do you find so I was gonna say, do you find now that like, because I feel like water is really energizing, calming, creates peace. Like when I'm around water, it's just like a different energy, right? Whether it's the ocean or the lake. So do you find that it kind of does two things for you? One, it provides kind of that peace and that calm and that kind of reminiscing, but then also is inspiring and kind of creating more energy and flow and focus for you on this project that you're working on?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a little terrifying. Like water is scary. You can die. Like, it might kill you, but also like it's so obviously important for life. There's an entire like an entire ecosystem underneath the water that we just don't get to see very often. Mm-hmm. And kind of understanding that interplay of how what we do above the water affects what's going on below the water. That whole circle of life thing becomes very apparent and in your face when you're so close to it.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Lori, so many good tidbits, great inspiration as always. If people want to connect with you and like keep track of the project you're working on, learn more about you, or even maybe just get resources for them to do better in their own personal green journey, how can they do that?
I think I'm the most discoverable on LinkedIn. And that's a pretty easy place to find me. I'm fairly respondent as a human being within this digital platform.
I love it. Well, we'll link all of that up in the show notes so that you can easily find Lori and connect with her there. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
So do you love Lori as much as I do? I feel blessed to have her as a childhood friend and still a friend in my adult life, somebody that I can always go to bounce ideas off of. And now that I live closer to home, we get to see each other a whole lot more, which I feel blessed to do as well. If you want to check out all the podcasts you mentioned, the resources, you can go to easystylewithsammy.com/15. You can check us out on YouTube or wherever you stream podcasts. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe or leave us a review so that we can show up for more people that need to hear these kinds of inspiring stories. Remember, if you don't take anything else from this episode, take her positivity and her stance on celebrating the small wins and remembering that everything counts. Thank you so much for listening to this episode and all the other episodes of the Easy Style with Sammy podcast. I appreciate you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.